Hello, I'm live with Adriano. I'm gonna make sure I get your name right. Is it Spoletini?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Got it right the first time. So I've known Adriano now for probably 10 years. We met through the Rain Group. He's a very successful investor out of Prince George, um, which is obviously northern BC. So welcome to the program today, Adriano.
Thanks for having me.
So kind of what piqued my interest in this, we were just kind of talking about, the raising capital craze these days, and that seems like it's all you see. But can you tell me your story in multifamily? I understand you've been at it a little bit longer than I have. I think you started in 2002 with your first building, with an investment of less than 300,000, and now you're up to 10 buildings. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I guess I can back it up even farther than that. I guess in about 1991-ish, I bought my first rental, which was just a house. And I had purchased about four houses in a span of about, I guess, 4 years, 3 years, something like that. And the market here at that time was not very good as far as rentals went. Like I think we were sitting in 2002 when I bought my first multi, um, we were sitting at about a 25% vacancy rate. So it was quite high. So what happened was I had these four houses. They were kind of bought and paid for at that time. And, from work, I would take my money out of my other business and what do you do with your money? You throw it in the stock market, you whatever. And I did put some in the stock market, and I thought, well, I'm going to buy some, you know, rental properties. And so I started that way. And one day I was out middle of winter shoveling one of my driveways in a vacant unit, and I'm thinking, this is crazy, man. Like, what am I doing? Like these things are, because when you have a house and vacant, you're 100% vacant. And I'm thinking, like, this is nuts, right? So I really second guessed what I was doing at that point. And my neighbor at the time was a realtor. And he came to me one day because we'd come home about the same time for dinner. And so we were talking one day, and he mentioned to me about this apartment building, the first one I bought, my little 12 unit. And he said, would I be interested? And I said, well, sure. Because at that point, I had my houses paid for. And, houses back then were renting for about 750 a month, right? So weren't making, I guess the market at the time was what the market was. So I thought, well, I've got a lot of capital tied up here, only making me X dollars where I could be making more if I took and leveraged these properties. So he came to me and asked me, and I said, well, sure, I'll look at it. So I went and looked at this property. And at the time when I went and looked at it, some doctors out of Vancouver that owned it, and there was four occupied units out of 12 when I looked at it. And so I put an offer in on it. They were asking probably 100,000 more than I was asking. I offered, and the market, like I said, the market then was, you couldn't sell stuff really. So I put an offer in, and we negotiated the price down to I got it for 370,000, and so then the work kind of began. As you got to go to the bank and do all the stuff. So I went to my bank, and how this all started was my banker said to me, how much money do you want? And me being a smart ass, I thought, well, I said, I want it all. And he didn't really flinch. He said, oh, okay, well, here's what we can do and this and that. So originally he wanted to take all my houses. And I said, yeah, no, you're not touching my houses. I said, you can take one, right, for the down payment, and then take the other 75% out of the building. So he agreed to that. Plus, they also had some deal going at the bank where they were giving out a $250,000 line of credit for interest only at prime. And I said, I'll take that too, right? So that's kind of how I financed the thing, and I got it at 100% financing, which, I only put 20% into the houses, and I paid for the four houses. I think I was into those houses for about, when I bought them all, I'd say all of them for about 400 and a bit. So, I was in at that point about 80,000 bucks. And so then I got into this building at 370,000. If you count the 80 for 80 grand, really, right? But I already had that out and it paid back and all that. So, it was really 100% financed at that point. but I also overpaid for the building because it only appraised at 360 and I paid 370. And then of course, 4 units occupied out of 12, it kind of was scary for me, right? So I thought, well, man, what, lost a lot of sleep because I'm thinking, what happens if I lose all the tenants? Now, how am I going to pay this? And I thought, well, can't happen that way. I mean, at least something's got to be rented. And so I went into it and I jumped in both feet and got her going, and things, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And then it started to snowball. Well, a year later, or actually it was about a year later, same realtor pull up again from one day coming home. He goes, hey, you want to buy another building? I said, well, sure, I'll go take a look. So we went and looked, and this was a 30 unit that I bought, the second one. So we'll look at this
So
building.
hang on 1 second. So your second building, you just jumped immediately to a 30 suiter.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what happened was the lady that owned the building, she lived in this building and had 2 of her kids living in the building. And so they had 3 units occupied. So I went and looked at this building and we couldn't come to a deal. Like, they were overpriced. So the offer I'd made, we were 100,000 apart. So I walked. So this thing sat. A year later, it was literally a year later. So we're in 2004 now. The realtor goes, hey, that building, it's back on the market with this lady. Do you want? I said, well, let's go take another run at it. So we did, right? And this time we struck a deal. This building was a rough one to go. Let me tell you, when I got in there, it was like, wow, like this is going to be some work, right? Because she pretty much just rented to anybody, right? And so you got to remember, our rental market at that point was tough, right? Like, rents were low, and I mean, people are always renting, but it was low, and there was a lot of vacancies and this kind of stuff, right? So at this point, I'm 2 years in with that little 12 suiter, and it was going good. So what I started doing is, as my houses came vacant, because that was the game plan, I said, me and my wife discussed it. We completely got out of the residential homes and went to multifamily, and I just sold them off as they came vacant. At that point, when I got into the second building, there again, I overpaid for this thing by $12,000. It was 24,000 over originally, but what happened was, once I got all the appraisals and all that stuff in, I went back to her and renegotiated, and she wouldn't come down to what it was actually appraised at. So I made her pay all my expenses, and she agreed to that. So she paid all my expenses for the appraisals and the phase ones and all the inspections and everything. And so I bought this 30 units for 624,000. And so as soon as I took it over, amazingly enough, I bought the first one, it was April 1st of 2002. And the second one was April 1st of 2004. So it was kind of
2 April Fool's Day gifts for you there.
Yeah. So anyways, I get onto this building, and we had to do a lot of cleaning up in there. So that building turned into a chore. And so we had 24 units occupied on April 1st. On April 2nd, out of 30, because she had 3 of them and 3 were vacant. So 6 I had vacant the day I took over. So April 2nd, we handed out 23 eviction notices. So it was just a gong show. By July 1st, I was down to 6 occupied units out of 30 in that building. So yeah, so now fast forward about not even a year, 10 months later, same realtor again. He goes, hey, I got someone that'll buy your building. Do you want to sell it? So this is the 30 unit. And this is February of 2005 now. So it's 10 months in. I said, I don't know. He goes, I'll get you at 1.5 million. Okay. I paid 624. I said, okay, give me a minute here. I got to phone my accountant here. So, phone the accountant. I said, hey, what's the deal here? Like, if I sell this thing, where's my tax bill? Where's this? What's that? I mean, obviously I still owed the bank, but because I 100% financed this one as well. I went into it and just kind of re-leveraged the little building and so I didn't put any money in. And I think I probably I paid the closing costs, which was about, at that point, I think about $6 or $8 grand. So that was this is how I got to the 280K, was from the houses and the little bit of the closing costs and that kind of stuff. And so then when I went to the accountant, he told me, you'd walk away with, maybe about $500,000 after you did everything. And I thought, well, that's a lot of work for $500,000. I thought, then what, right? I said, nah. So I'm going to hang on to it. So I told the realtor, I'm not interested. I said, I'm going to hang on to it. So obviously I've hung on to that building, still own it today. The thing's generating like crazy. It's paid for. Out of the 10, I think I've got 4 of them completely paid. And then I've got 2 that I owe like minuscule amounts on that could be paid off tomorrow if I chose to. So, and all because of, just re-leveraging, and then on top of it, the costs and the prices have gone way up. But so have the rents, right?
Yeah, so just some context here, Adriano, just stop you for a second. I'm just like, I know you and I have talked about this, but I didn't realize. I'm just doing the quick math in my head here. So you paid $624,000 for a 30-suite building.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So that's I'm just doing quick. That's slightly more than $20,000 a door.
It was the realtor told me when I bought it, he goes, that was the lowest per door that ever sold at that time, right? And obviously you're not seeing that anymore, right?
And that was around 2005, right?
It was 2004. Yeah. April 1st, 2004. Yeah.
So I started around then too. I was doing JVs. I bought my first building in 2008, but I joint ventured, on another deal in around 2004. The prices in Edmonton at the time were about 50,000 a door. So obviously,
Right.
PG was just sort of coming online, or you were going through a low period at that point.
Yeah. Well, and then needless to say, 10 months later, on 30 units, I could have sold it for 1.5. So, you can see the numbers where it was, right? And the market started getting stronger too. So that was my second building. And then July 1st of 2008 is when I bought my third building. And it was literally right around the corner from the one that I just bought, the 30 unit I bought. And this was 21 units. And this building came on, and they wanted, I can't remember what, it was close to $1 million. And I paid 910 or 905 for it when we settled out on it.
Just doing the dates in my head here. This was almost imminently after the great financial crash, right?
Yeah.
2008. Did you have any hesitation about buying into a building? Like the credit markets were frozen at that point. Did you have any trouble buying this building?
No, it was funny because at that time I did, I always had money in the stock market and stuff with this investor, and he was, and obviously I was watching that crash, and I was kind of a little concerned about it at the time. And me and my wife were out for a walk, and I was thinking like maybe we should pull all our money out, and this and that, and we didn't. And obviously we took a hit like everybody else. So it came probably right when the crash was happening. I phoned this guy. I said, "Hey, I want my money out, man. Send it to me. I'll put it in my own bank account, whatever. I don't need it sitting." And of course, he starts getting a little antsy because now he's losing a paycheck, right? And I just said, he's tried telling me, "Oh, well, real estate's going to do this and real estate's going to do that," and on and on. And I said, "Well, as bad as the markets are and what's going on in the world and stuff," I said, "I can still drive down the street, see my place, touch it, feel it. It's right there. It's in my hands, right?" I said, "I can't do that with the stocks. I got no control over it." So that was kind of how that kind of shook out. And then I did go to between the 2004 and 2008, I went to a RAIN meeting in 2005. It was, I think, Octoberish, Novemberish in Edmonton. And that was my first RAIN meeting. And then I signed up at that point. And then and I bought some condos in Edmonton, bought 5 condos in Edmonton. I started dealing on them in kind of right after that meeting. And I closed on them in early 2006. And to this day, I still own them. And my goal was, I thought maybe I'll get into the condo game and expand and have a ton of condos. But there again, that was the only condos I ever bought, only because I find the multifamily is just so much easier and so much better. And so I'm at the stage now where I'm actually considering getting rid of those condos, taking the funds and buying more multifamily, right? I do keep in contact with some realtors out in Alberta there for apartment buildings. I don't know the market out there so well, but I find some of the units out there that they're trying to sell seem to be overpriced. I think a lot of them anywhere right now, guys are trying to cash out, right? Um, and some people are buying them. Like there was one lady in town here, she bought a 9 unit, and this was only about a year ago, if even a year. She paid 145,000 a door for this 9 unit, and it's
Wow.
literally down the street from one of my buildings. And so her and her husband have a couple of like a house and a duplex or a up and down house or something. So she phones me up because she has no experience in multifamily and asked me if I'd be interested if I could sit down. I said sure. So, we talked and I feel bad for this lady because she is paying, like she has put so much money into this building. And yes, I understand you have to, but they're putting money in, like, better security, more cameras, redoing units, and she's just pumping money in, right? And I said to her, I said, you got to watch that you slow down sometimes. I go, because these things can bankrupt you if you don't watch what you're
Yeah,
doing.
that's a great point. And the alligator factor for me, I mean, I changed niches. I moved from Edmonton, the market I know very well, to Saskatoon, where I grew up, thinking I knew that market well. But I got skinned alive. I mean, I didn't do rental surveys when I bought. The building had way more deferred maintenance than I thought. I've done well on my last three buildings because, like as you said, I put in an offer. My offer was not accepted. It was, Corey, that's too cheap. The seller's not going to accept. Okay. I sat back and waited. 3 months later, they called me and they were willing to deal at my price. I bought three buildings that way.
That's
So
right.
with the amount of money of deferred maintenance and amount of cash these buildings can vacuum out of you, how important is it to hit that, to know your value going in and hit that right the first time?
Well, I think it's super important. I mean, I watch these guys. I think people are just jumping into these multifamily units, just thinking that, oh, it's multifamily. Everybody's buying them. Got to buy it. It kind of reminds me of these people that hear about a stock tip, and then they just go out and they just pay whatever it's worth, and they don't do any homework on it. And then you look like, you look at these guys like that are buying up properties in Vancouver, and they're capping out at 2.7, man. Mortgages are, 3.5, 3.3, and they're going up. I mean, yeah, if you can get CMHC, but that's a long drawn out process. And to get the CMHC on board, you're going to lose the deal anyways. Because a lot of the people that are buying up those properties in Vancouver, they're losing money on them just to get the play on the building, which to me, I'm not into it for that. I'm into it for the passive income. I want the income, right? Um, you know, uh, I've heard Thomas say his big saying is, cash is king and cash flow is queen. Well, to me, I kind of reverse that, because to me, I think the cash flow to me is more important than the actual cash. And people look at me and go, what? Because to me, it's steady income, right? And I think, I think you got to, at least I do kind of the same thing as you do. I think you have to look at all of those factors and what is important deferred maintenance. Can you get away with, like, maybe windows you can wait 3-5 years. You can get away with that. But you can't get away with replacing furnaces, replacing roofs. If the unit's completely trashed, that kind of stuff, right? And
I look at a 10-year horizon when I'm buying a building. If that roof has to be replaced within 10 years, the decks, the parking lots, and even the windows, because like you say, I didn't want to replace my windows on my 24 suiter, but after too many tenant complaints and leaks, I was forced to do that. It was
yeah,
flagged on the engineering report, but I was lazy. It was poor due diligence on my part, and I paid for that.
and,
So
and I
I look at a 10-year horizon. If I have to replace something in less than 10 years, that has to be factored into my purchase price.
Yeah. And you know what, Corey, I do the exact same thing. I've done the exact same thing as you, buying these buildings, not knowing what I'm getting into at times. And, like that little 12 suiter and the 30 suiter, I replaced the roofs on both of those. It's been a few years now, probably about 5-6 years. And it was $100,000 to do those two, because I did them the same year. but it's, you're looking, do you have cash to do it? Right. That's the kicker. So my biggest thing is, like you do, as I go in and look at the big things, roofs, boilers, um, windows, even stuff like that, and then decide, is it value worth that, right? And some people, they just push the envelope, right? They'll just gamble it. I'm not willing to gamble. I'd much rather step aside and let somebody else take it, because I read a lot of books in my day, and a lot of the stuff I read was all through, like, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I remember one book I read with Dolph DeRuse. I don't know if you ever read his book, but one of the things he said, and it's always stuck with me. He goes, because, as you get calls from realtors. Hey, Corey, there's a deal here. This, the deal of the century, whatever. And
Yeah,
Dolph
I sure
DeRuse,
do.
yeah, and Dolph's comment was, the deal of the century comes around once a week. And I just don't get married to real estate. Like, I don't. It's not a passion in the sense that, oh, I gotta. I watch people, they buy these homes and they fall in love with them. I don't fall in love with this stuff. It's there as a vehicle for me, and that's all I care about. Um, don't get me wrong. I maintain my buildings. I try to fix the stuff. I try to take care of my tenants that way and stuff like that. But at the same time, you got to draw that line and decide what's right and what's wrong. Am I right all the time? Absolutely not. Have I made mistakes? A ton of them. It's cost me big money, right? But I can sit on the sidelines and watch the game go by, or jump in and learn as I go. And I'm sure that's where you're, what you've done, right? And
Yeah,
now,
like sometimes, like I've talked to, like, investors like Arlen Dolan, and we openly admit that our asses were saved by strong markets. We bought
yes,
poor buildings in poor areas where we should have been skinned alive, and we got lucky. But
yeah,
we've learned from those. So a couple of myths and facts I want to talk to you, and you seem to have smashed a couple of them. So the first one is, you can only make money on apartments in large cities: Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary. Obviously not the case. You've done extremely well in Prince George, and maybe I'll get you to say a little bit about Prince George for the viewers who don't know. But just gonna read, a little snippet from your post on my Rain Space back in 2019. So you said, I bought my first multi in 2002. Since then, I've purchased 8 multifamily and 2 commercial. I've only put in 280,000 in my own pocket. Now, since then, you've picked up another 2 buildings. And you said, so my real estate portfolio is worth 20 million today, being conservative. I'm a firm believer in real estate. So this was a real estate in comparison to mutual funds. So I'd say your portfolio today is probably even more valuable than that.
well, like I said, I think I've run the numbers, and I think I'm probably around the 40 million mark right now.
That's
And
and
that's
starting with an investment of $280,000, right? And
yeah,
some
right.
houses.
Well, see, I guess people, I've done a lot of things in my life, and I still own, I've had businesses, and I still own some businesses, but um, I guess people get scared to put the money out, and yes, I've taken risks, and I still do. I find that Prince George right now, and it's been for quite a few years now. We have so many people from the Lower Mainland buying up buildings up here. So many people from, like, the Okanagan moving here and buying up our like, housing market here is just, you throw something on the market.
Graphic of Prince George, like what's the population and what's the main business drivers up there for those who don't know?
Well, yeah. So Prince George, they say our population's around the 85, 86,000, but I think we're more than that. I think we're probably closer to about 100,000. And we've probably got a drawing area of, and saying about you know, we get people coming in from Terrace, Cornell, Kitimat, all those. So we got about $250,000 drawing wise there. Pulp mills are big here. Sawmills are big here. We have a lot. I have tenants that are working out at the Site C Dam. Quite a few of them. I have people working out at Mount Milligan mines, so there's mining around us, so we get a lot of that. The university is a big driver for us. We have a university and a college, and a lot of people in town that work at the university go to the university. And then, like any other mid-size city, we have a lot of, fast food and stuff like that. So I guess the big thing is definitely those things like the mills, the sawmills, the mines, that kind of stuff is the big thing for us, right?
So since 2000, I know since 2014, I mean, I've been in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and 2015 to 2021 were the worst years to be a multifamily investor. I mean, we saw vacancy rates as high as 20% in Saskatoon. Our rents, we went 5 years without giving a rent increase. Now, obviously, it sounds like in Prince George, you were shielded from that, or must have been more diversification. And it sounds like it's the opposite. It sounds like it's done very well during that same time.
Yeah, like I would say between 2014 and now, I've got, like, let's just say in 2014 we were renting 2-bedroom apartments for 800, 850. I'm now 1,300 for a 2-bedroom apartment, and no problem getting it. Um, Actually, we're still cheaper than some. There's a bunch of new builds, and when I say new builds, I'm talking apartment buildings going up in this town right now. Some are done, and some are more coming. And some of these guys, which is good for me because a friend of mine said to me, "Aren't you scared with all these new buildings?" I said, "No, because these guys are going to have to charge more because they've the costs, right? The building costs have gone up." So there's one down the street from me, literally around the corner from one of my buildings, and they're charging. It's a new apartment building, granted, but they're charging 1,600 for a 1-bedroom starting. Well, my 1-bedrooms, I'm getting 1,000, 1,100. So, comparable in the sense that, they're electric heat in that building, I'm electric heat. You know what I mean? So I'm $400 to $500 to $600 cheaper. And these guys have started charging parking, which is good for me too, because now I could actually start to charge the parking, right? So, I really try to watch that market. And, it was funny because I went to this one rain meeting years ago, and things were getting kind of rough around here in the sense of, the economy and stuff in BC. And I talked to Don Campbell, and I said to him, I got some property and that time, as you know, Alberta was hot. Like you were making nothing but killer cash there. And Don Campbell had said to me, "Well, you need to get out of that market. Like that's, the way the economics and everything, you should get out." I said, "Oh, okay," but I was still doing well, right? Because I bought in so cheap, and things were paying, and my mortgages weren't much, and they were getting paid down, and I was still making money. It's always made money, right? So I didn't, and then things turned, and it's funny because I watched, through rain, how they were saying, you watch these people are buying into smaller markets like, Grand Prairie became hot, and Fort St. John. And Fort St. John was always the hot spot in BC for the longest time, right? But to me, I've been offered many times to go there, but to me, I didn't want to go any farther north than where I am. And on top of that, it's a volatile market in my eyes. I know Fort St. John is still strong, but I don't know. For me, I just can't get my head away from it's a smaller place. The weather's not as great. Why would people want to live there? Well, people live there to go to work, obviously, but it's always concerning when you see the oil market, to me, dry up. What's it going to do to the gas? Because Fort St. John's oil and gas, right? So I've always shied away from there for that reason, I guess. But I try to follow what's going on in other provinces to see how I'm doing compared to how they're doing, that kind of thing. And I've talked to you many times about Alberta and Saskatchewan, and those markets way better than I do. And it's interesting to hear the different things. And we've talked before about people being scared to step into areas that need work. But to me, I think that's where the money's to be made, right? If you can turn those buildings around, which I don't think would take much. I see a lot of people, they shy away, and everybody worries about areas more than they do about their tenants. And I've always felt that, the areas aren't bad. It's the people in the building that make the area bad. And if you can clean up your building and get a good building, you'll get good renters. And so that's what I've always kind of worked on. And yes, it's work, right? So I don't know if that kind of answered the question as to what you were
I
saying.
know it is absolutely work. And I was going to ask about raising capital, but I want to ask one more question about this. So you've amassed a massive portfolio in a fairly short period of time here. Have you always self-managed your buildings? Have you ever had a management company?
I've never had a management company. I had a guy that was a manager for me, and this guy was quite good. When I bought my second building, I brought him in, and he actually, because he was in he used to manage motels, and I've known this guy for years, and so he got in, and he's the one that actually helped me clean up my 30 unit. I mean, we had crackheads in there. We had, you name it, like, and we were throwing people out left, center, and right. So that first year in that building, I was paying out of pocket because, I mean, we went down to 6 tenants by July. And but after that, it was just an uphill climb like I've never seen. We just it was just like a snowball, just gaining speed because we cleaned it up and we got better tenants and we just moved along. We took risks on some things, like we would look at a unit and say, okay, because you got to remember we were at 25% vacancy. So one of the things that me and him, we talked a lot. Like I was with him a lot, and one of the things that we talked about was, okay, well, this guy's okay, but we're going to have to babysit him. Do we want to do that? Just to keep some cash flow. So we did a little bit of that, right? We took on people that normally, like today, I wouldn't take those people on, but we took on people like that just to kind of get things going. And we gave, some people turned out to be really good. You know what I mean? Like we took chances on some and turned out to be really good. So we ended up doing that where we slowly gained the property to where we wanted it to be and gained the value of raising the value of the rents. And so one of the things that he taught me, and it made sense, he goes, if you go too cheap, and he brought this out from a motel that he used to manage, right? He said, when you go down to the Okanagan and you rent a motel room and they got 20 empty rooms and you go rent one, you're going to get it for $39 a night, whatever it was at that time. He goes, by the time you've rented out all those rooms and there's one left, he goes, I would just raise the rent. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, that last room would rent for $89 a night. And he goes, because that's all I had. And that's how he kind of did. So we kind of took the same approach in our apartments. People would come and look. I would never tell them that we had, 20 empty units. So when he managed it, and this is the things that kind of little things he taught me, he would say, okay, well, we only have one available. And so what he would do is he would show them the one, right? So people never knew. We kept it that way. And so we kind of handpicked our tenants that way. And then sometimes you get a better tenant and he says, oh, by the way, we have a unit that we just haven't even advertised. So he would play that game and he would show them something else that he thinks these people would be better suited for, that we have fixed up and charged, a little bit more for, and get a better tenant. And that's kind of how we did it. So I had him for about a year. And so I really learned a lot from him in that year and took some of my stuff and his, and so brought him on, and he ran it. Now, so that would have been 2004 to 2005, roughly. He left in 2005 and I brought on another guy, and I did it for a bit in between. I brought another guy on for about a year. But the problem with this other guy, I was babysitting him. So I drive by my buildings. I go, the lawn's not mowed. What the hell? So I phoned the guy and he said, oh, I'm at the park. I go, man, you need to mow the lawn because tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. I go, it's going to rain tomorrow. So it rains, you got to wait 2 days, So this went on for a while. And one day I just said to my wife, I'm just going to get rid of this guy and I'm going to manage it myself. And it'll save me this much money. It'll be enough to pay one of the mortgages. Right. And that was kind of the plan. It wasn't to do it, to keep doing it. It just kind of happened. So to this day, I'm still doing it all myself. Right. Maybe I'm a little bit too much of a control freak. But what I happen to do now, and it seems to work okay, is when I head out of town, I just have some, I have a couple of people who do work for me and clean and stuff. So I'll just hand my phone off to them. and say, hey, I'm gone. And I keep in touch with them. I say, here's what we have available. And they kind of know, and I've taught them a bit. So here's kind of our plan now, because, obviously as you get bigger, you need more people. And there should come a point where I need to hand this off to somebody. And I know that. It's finding that somebody. I've talked to management companies. I've watched management companies. I have a hard time with management companies because I know what they do. They don't answer their phones. They don't take care of my buildings. And they're managing so many properties that where do I fall in the mix here?
Let me try to get a number here. Is it how many units do you manage then? Is it like 250-ish? Is it more than that?
It's 215 doors right now,
Okay,
right?
215. Wow. That's a
Plus two,
lot for one person.
and then
Yeah,
the two
plus two
commercial.
commercial.
Commercial's pretty straightforward, takes care of itself, right? So I've got two of those on top of, right?
Yeah, so a part of my, what I'm teaching these days too is, you have to have a large enough portfolio that you're worth your property manager's time. Now, I'm sure if you, went to somebody in Prince George, you're gonna fall pretty bloody high on that list, with
Yeah.
that many units. But it's just, I know Terry Parandish in Edmonton, he did the same thing. He had a massive portfolio in Beverly, and he self-managed it for the longest time. But you don't hear about this very often, right? It's kind of, a little bit.
Well, no, you don't, and I don't. A lot of people don't agree with it. Am I a workaholic? I think so. I know so. I'm okay with that. It also, it affords me the things that I want to do, right? You know, uh, it makes me comfortable to know that I can afford to do things I want to do. It's been a scary ride, Corey. I got to say, I've never ever said that it wasn't. As you know, when you got into your first building, I know about me, and my wife will tell you the same thing. When I bought that little 12-suiter, I must have not slept for 3 or 4 days wondering how I was going to make this work. But I still
Yeah,
jumped
my,
in.
my 12 seater was the same thing. I bought it like 600 kilometers from where I was living. I had a full-time job and I had a new baby, and it was a complete piece of crap. So
Yeah,
I didn't sleep for months. Everything that
yeah.
I could have done wrong did. We're kind of running a little bit short on time, so I want
Sure.
to switch to raising capital now. So all we hear about these days is, raising capital, raising capital. I'm teaching some students now that this is not necessarily the way to do this. I know a few people like yourself that have been, incredibly successful on your own. And there's a lot of advantages to that. You don't have any partners, you have no one to answer to. So as we discussed, before we went on air here, when you get into a partnership, there can be a lot of things happen. Like if you don't have your divorce strategy set out, one partner wants out, something happens. So, but investors will come to me and say, Corey, buying a building is just too much money. I don't have that money. So I have to do a JV. This is the only way I can scale up. How do you respond to that?
Well, there's more than enough money out there. You can find money if you really want it. And I think you can buy any building and anything you want if you really want it. I think the biggest problem is people aren't sure of themselves and don't want to take the risk. And I will say this, I don't care how many times you run those numbers, how many times the realtor shows you everything. I don't think there's been a building I've bought that I've not gotten into and had to put some money in within a week, a month. Something breaks, right? And I kind of know that. So I just think it's a desire in my eyes. For me, it was. I just had a vision that I'm going to do this, and I just pursued to do it, and I did whatever I had to do it. If it means I can't sleep to do the work, that's what I do. But I just did it, and it became now I like the last building I bought, I paid 3,050,000 for it. I didn't even wince at it. I didn't 100% financed it. I was always reading these things in the US, 100% finance, 100%. But people go, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I go, well, what do you mean you can't do that? Why? So people don't think that what I did was 100% financed. But if I use my line of credit and it's bank money, it's not my money. They just gave me a credit. And then I get 75% financing. To me, that's 100% finance, right?
Absolutely, it is. I've done the same thing. Yeah.
And I would do that all day long. And, I've said to people, you have a house you live in. Is your house paid for? Well, I go, but you must have a ton of equity. Why not pull out a line of credit on your house and use that? Well, I don't feel comfortable. I go, well, that I think becomes the issue, right? I think we underestimate ourselves a lot in the sense of how much you can actually get if you try to get. And then some people, I think, I've talked to some people, they think that they should just buy real estate and quit their job. Well, you got to keep your job just in case, and do what you do until you can actually quit your job and not worry about it. I just, I've had lots of people come to me to joint venture, but they want me to do the work. They want me to. So, for instance, this one guy came to me one day, and he's a friend of mine, and he says to me, he says, "Hey, I want to go and in partnership with you on a building." And we had nothing. He goes, I said, "Okay, well, here's the deal." I said to him, "I've got the knowledge. I'm doing all the work. So you put up the down payment, and I want this percent. I can't even remember the percentage I gave him, and I want this, and this is how it's going to pay back." And I kind of laid it out. "Well, no, I don't want to do that." He says, "I want you to put in 50%, me to put in 50%. And I said, "Well, stop right there." I said, "You want me to put in 50% of my money and you to put in 50% of your money, and we're going to use all my knowledge and all my mistakes and all my loss of money and everything I've done, and you're going to gain on that, and I'm not really going to get anything from it." And he kind of looked at me. He didn't see it that way. I said, "Well," I said, "I'm not trying to be rude." I said, "But I don't need your 100 grand. I can do it on my own." I said, "I'm going to go find the deal because nobody's going to call you. You're not in the game. They're not even going to listen to you." I said, "I'll go find the deal and do it myself." Well, that was 6 buildings ago, right? And so, this guy has his own electrical company, and I use him for that, right? But and I get calls from all the time. "Hey, what do you think of this property or that property?" And trying to buy houses or duplexes. To this day, he still hasn't bought anything, right?
It's funny that you say that because I get those calls too from people who have never done multi and they think it's flipping easy,
Yeah.
and they want to do a JV where I put in half and then they're getting equal percent. It's like, do you have any idea the work and sacrifice that I've gone through for the last 20 years to get where I'm at?
Yeah.
Exactly all these things that you say. And it's like, that's such a powerful position to say, I don't need your contribution into this
Yeah.
JV.
Yeah.
But
And then
I mean, yeah,
when you do the deal, Corey, they're going, "Well, that's crazy. That's like I've never run into that because I haven't had partners in it, but I know I've heard people say and talk to people that have, well, including yourself, that all of a sudden you have a vision, they have a vision, but the vision there's changes and they want to know. Well, I've always said it's like you said, it's a 10-year hold. You need to be in 10 years. If you need the money before 10 years, you shouldn't be in this because anything 10 years things change, right? And you got to be able to change with it. At the end of the day
I
you'll
like to
come out
say that.
okay.
Sorry,
No, I said
cut
at
you
the
off
end of
there.
the day you'll come out okay, right? After 10 years, I think, right?
Yeah. So what I say is I always tell people whenever they're getting in, I say, look, it's not a get rich quick scheme. It's a get rich for sure scheme if we do it right and we have patience. Like I had to I blew through all the reserves in Saskatoon because we turned over 20 of 24 units because we had 24 vacancies. We had to, we were losing tenants at 1,100, spending 10 grand to fix and re-renting for 850. And
Yeah.
that was the market. That went on for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And but now we have a brand new renovated, building, and now we're catching the upswing. But yeah, I mean, don't put your last cents in there if you need it back. And the other huge misconception is that people think I see this cash on cash return. So they think if they buy a 75% levered building, they're instantly going to start making money. In my experience, it takes at least 2 to 3 years just to stabilize the flipping thing. And you
Exactly.
might be lucky if you start generating positive cash flow after 5. Is that kind of your
Yes.
experience?
Yes. I was just going to say, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Like, I have never seen a building where it doesn't take at least 2 years to get, because the way I look, what I try to tell people is I've got that now the building's become mine in the sense that I've inherited these tenants. Some of them I don't want, but now I gotta flip them out. I gotta get them out of here, and it takes that long to get them out. It takes time to figure out who are the good, who are the bad, and then get rid of them. And then, like you said, you're spending money the whole time, right? And I totally agree with you on that sense. You know, like I think that if you can get in and you can see the vision. I think you like, you know, like what you said in Saskatoon. If that building, if you would have went to buy that building with a 24% vacant or 24 units vacant on a 24 unit building, there's no bank in their right mind that's going to lend you a red cent. So by doing what you did, and even if you completely vacant, you know, the bank don't know, they don't care. They're just looking for their money. As long as their money's coming, you're good. But now you've just turned something into, you know, that now is going to do nothing but cash flow. It may not be today, but guaranteed it's going to happen. And then the as the cash flow goes and as the rents come up, your value of your building is going to go up, right?
And it's funny because I bought 10 buildings over 10 years now, 12 years, and every single time, and I don't know why, I bought buildings that are in excellent condition. I bought buildings that were in complete crappy condition. When I take over the first 6 months, I always lose a third of the building to turnover, no
Yeah,
matter what, every single time. Or hot water tank goes. Some kind of major thing goes that I was not intending to, almost every single time. Right.
same boat. I'm in the exact same boat. And I think the big thing that happens is people don't like change. So, and I know that going in when I'm buying buildings and I'm going to lose some tenants because they all try to sell you it's 100% occupied. I go for this month. What about next month, right? And I lose tenants too, right? I think people don't like change. They don't like new management. They don't like how things are going or how you
Uh,
change things.
yeah, and this is why I tell people they're so hung up on cap rate when they buy. And I say, look, within 6 months, you're going to have a whole different income and expense. Like your R&M is going to be different, your insurance is going to be different, your management is going to be different, your income is going to be different. So forget about the cap rate going in. We need to look at market value, what market rents are, and the value that you bring to it to determine how much you're willing to pay and how much is it going to cost me to get to those rents, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of back to what you said, Corey. It's the experience of knowing that, right? And I've had people, you know, they come to me and they go, hey, you know, can we go for coffee? Can we go for lunch? Can we, sure, you know, like, well, how did you do it? How do we get into this? I go, start buying a house. I go,
And
they go, oh, I don't want to buy a house. I go, well, you need some experience. You need to know what you're getting into. I go, to
well,
jump in, you know,
that lady that you just told about that paid 145 a door. I've had so many calls from that of people that have overpaid for buildings, not knowing what they get into. Once you've overpaid, it's too late. You can't go back. You're negative cash flow. You're in an instantly shitty position. So
exactly.
you
Yeah.
really got to know what you're doing going in. And this is why when it comes to valuation, like you'll have a realtor tell you, Adriano, this building we want 130 a door, but you know it's worth 90 a door.
Yeah.
Eventually, you get that call back that they're willing to go because they'll have 4 or 5 deals that fall apart because they can't get the financing. They were inexperienced to whatever reason, and you eventually get the building at your price. How many times have you bought a building like that?
Uh, Probably, I think only about two or three of them have
Okay.
come that route. Right now, the market in Prince George is so hot, people are just
Mm,
overpaying for these things, right?
right.
Example, there's a building, I bought two buildings in 2016, basically up the block from each other. One was a 24 suiter and one was a 25 suiter. I bought one April 1st of 16 and I bought one November 1st of 16. And there's a building in between them that was for sale at the same time, but it was already locked in contract. So the guy paid about the same as I paid per door at that time, which was about 89,000 a door. I happen to know the guy a bit. He just sold it like I bought my building January 21st. This thing came on the market within a week of that, February. He paid one, so it's 21 units. He paid 89 a door. So what? 1.2, a couple million bucks. Call it 2 million. It might not be quite that, but he just sold. He's only renovated himself 8 units out of the 21, and he just sold it for. And I drive by it every day, so he hasn't done a ton. Maybe the units themselves, but nothing else. So he had it for around 5 years, and he just sold it. He had it listed for 3.6, had 5 or 6 people on it, sold for 3.5. You know what I mean? So the realtor called me. I said, no, I'm not paying that for that building. That's a little high for my because I know the rents. I said, it just doesn't, to me, it's not, I'm risking too much. Well,
Sounds like
she
you're
goes,
still finding deals, but they're harder to find now. Like what I
yeah,
found in Edmonton too, there's probably better deals out there, but there's a lot of motivated vendors. There's guys that bought, when the market was really hot and they put in bad management, they have high vacancies, and they're in very, very crappy positions. It sounds
yeah.
like, maybe Prince George was an area where it didn't matter what you bought, even if you made some serious mistakes, you probably still made money.
Well, I think that was because back in the day there was, and only in the last 5 years have they actually started building new builds here for apartment buildings. I'm sure that's the same in some of these other smaller or, mid-sized markets, right? I think a lot of people back in the day were shying away from the mid-sized markets and we're going to the Vancouvers, the Edmontons, the Calgarys, the Saskatoon, the bigger centers because there'll always be people there. But the thing is, they've become so unaffordable for people to live that people are starting to move into the Kelownas, the Vernons, the Pentictons, the Prince George. They just keep moving to where they can afford and actually own something, right? And have a lifestyle. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it's turning into right now, right? I think this university for us has helped us in the sense that people come and then they want to stay because they see what we have, what's here and how they can have a life. And it's easier, I think, to going back to the raising capital. I think it's easier to raise money in a market like that where you can actually gain some stuff. Now, once that value's gone up, it's easier to get more money, as the way I see it, right? But I think it's that thing that people have this, like you said, they go from zero and they want to hit 100, and they're going to like Vancouver and want to try to buy an apartment building for 11 units for $14 million, and they go, well, how do I get the money? I think you've missed a big chunk of where look somewhere else.
I mean, I started house hacking. I started in single family. I bought $100,000 house and I rented out the basement. I started that road, and I know you mentioned early on it's recommending single family to start before you go
Yeah.
into multis. We just got a couple minutes left here. I just want to
Sure.
ask you, if you were starting out brand new today, what would you do as far as multifamily goes? Like knowing what you know now, having no money, what would be your strategy?
I would, if I did not own any multifamily and I had nothing else but a job, depending where my house value sat, or without my house value, I would go to the bank and start with a line of credit and see what kind of line of credit I can get. I get as much money from the bank. When the bank says to me, hey, do you want this line of credit for X dollars? I take it. Do I need it? Maybe not, but I take it because I don't know when I'm going to need it. If they up my credit card limit, I take it. Now, having said that, some people aren't good with credit. If you're not good with credit, maybe that's not the way to go. But for me, that's what I think I would do. And I would do not, knowing what I know now, I would take and borrow money to get into multifamily. But before I would do that, I would also investigate the housing market. And what I mean is, what's the rental? Who's renting? How long are they renting? What's around you? How are these buildings holding? Is there lots of vacancies? Are they run down? And all you got to do that, anybody can drive by a house or an apartment building or a duplex and go, that place needs work, because we all have this vision, right? So I think that's what I would do personally. And I think, I kind of did that at the beginning, but I didn't know a lot of that, right? I just, same as you, I gambled and
Baptism by fire, my friend.
that's right. But I
So
think that,
last question for you. Obviously, ton of news right now. The stock market's been crashing almost 3 days in a row now. We got inflation going on. We got the Bank of Canada rate has gone up. I mean, you're looking at 5-year CMHC money and 4% for a multifamily now. Where do you see multifamily in 12 months from now? Are we gonna keep going the way we're going? Is there gonna be a bit of a softening? What are your thoughts?
I think you're going to see I think you're going to see, like, right. I've already started to see a little bit. They just keep trying to raise prices, because people are paying it. I think you're going to see that settle down and it's going to be longer to sell. I think you're going to see it with the actual houses. And I think you'll see, because if the houses do it, the multifamily is going to do it. Right. And I think that's where you're going to, I think that's what you'll see. How much is hard to say. Because I've predicted things in my mind going, oh, this can't keep going like this, and it does. And then, the rates come down, and I had that problem years ago where I locked in a rate, and then as soon as I locked it in, I watched the interest rates just keep dropping, and I overpaid because I was locked in. So when I buy something, I go, well, I'm not paying that off in 2 years. I never go more than 3 years on a lock-in for that purpose, because 5 years is a long time and lots changes. So, even like you said, in 1 year, look at how much it's changed in 1 year. And now interest rates are starting to go up. So I think that's going to affect cap rates, which is got to have to drive the prices down. I mean, if interest goes up, it has to bring the prices down. So I'm just going to wait that out and see. Will I still buy? Of course I will. Is it a gamble? In my eyes, it's a calculated gamble, because I try to calculate all the things to go with it.
Well, the way I see it, I've bought some of my best buildings in hot markets. I've bought some of my best buildings in shitty markets. It's very deal dependent, and you never know when you're going to get a call. Oh, this vendor's now become motivated, or this building's become available. Great. I mean, the financing may not be as sweet as it was before, but I mean, if I'm going to own this building for 20 years, who cares? This is a solid asset.
And I'm totally with you on that. That's exactly how I see it, because I think you're right that, even if it changes in a year where interest rates hit 5%, 6%, I mean, really, we're talking peanuts. We used to buy at 7-8%, and now people are, if you're strapped at 2%, you shouldn't be buying. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, exactly. My first mortgage was 8%. So I'm comfortable operating in these higher rate environments. This is how it normally should be. People have just gotten so used to these low rates for so long. But it's definitely not normal.
But exactly what you said though too, with these interest rates going up, that's going to drive rents up. So I think it all kind of shakes out. And I think the biggest thing is, that I've learned over the years is to educate yourself on the rental, what the government, what is it, the tenancy branch stuff, right? To know what your rights are and how to navigate your way out. Because like you said, with things changing like they are, what are you going to do? How are you going to raise capital if you can't manage the people you got in there? And you say you got to get rid of all of them because you bought that building and they're all shitty tenants, or the rents are so low. Like, I know there's a building down the street from me right now that's for sale. They want $3 million for this building, 21 units. The thing has, and they've got no offers on it. I made an offer and they haven't even responded. I made my offer and I'm going to let it sit. And I made a high, like the offer to me is high in the sense now that the market, the interest rates are going up. So that building has got 1-bedroom apartments being rented for $600 a month. Its income on it is like, gross income is sitting at around 11,000 for 21 units. That's ridiculous. So no bank in their right mind is going to lend me $3 million on that. Right?
Well, this is a classic case of a vendor wanting to be rewarded for bad behavior, but they can't refinance their way out of that. They can't pull equity. So I don't understand, unless they have no mortgage and they're barely cash flowing and they're okay with that. So you got to think there's going to be some motivation at some point.
Well, there is a mortgage on it. I know that. And the place needs work. The roof needs to be done. The yards is a mess. I drive by it every day. Like, it's between my other buildings. And I've watched it. I go for walks. I walk by it. I look at this building. I've tried to make offers on this building in the past. I don't understand it. But one day, 7, 8 years ago, I took a run at that building, and now here I am again, but they haven't even responded. And I just said, whatever, I don't need it. If it happens, it happens. But it's like you said, these guys are, oh, the market's hot, so this is what we want. Well, there's nothing to back it, right? So I just stick to my guns on that. And now I just walk away from anything. I just don't try to buy it because it's multifamily. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't fall in love with buildings. So we're out of
No.
time, Adriano, but I want to thank you so much for this. It was totally awesome. 280,000 investment to a $45 million portfolio. Absolutely fabulous to have you on. And I hope we can meet at some point in the future here.
Yeah, it'd be good now that this pandemic's starting to go away. So great having me. Great having you to this and having me come on. I really enjoyed this and getting some insight on what's going on in the provinces you're in as well. Kind of gives me some more of what we're doing. You know, like I've always said, you can always learn, and I'm always ears open to what people are doing because there's no way you can know it all. So I try to listen, right? So.
Never stop learning. Okay,
No.
Adriano, we'll touch base in 6 months to a year from now.
Sounds good, man. Okay. Thanks for having me. Talk
Yeah,
soon. All
thank
right.
you.
See you later.